Grisha and Ilya, two best friends since childhood, had long dreamed of a real adventure. The rumors about the abandoned dormitory on the outskirts of the city fueled their imagination. Locals claimed the building was cursed, and something supernatural lurked within, trying to devour anyone who ventured inside. For the young thrill-seekers, these were just additional details that made their plan even more exciting. So, armed with flashlights, a couple of cameras, and a healthy dose of enthusiasm, they set off. The journey to the dormitory was long. When they arrived, the building already looked like a living reminder of abandonment. Tattered walls, broken windows, overgrown with bushes and trees. Grisha, in his signature jacket, proudly declared, "So, this is it, the very place. They say you can meet ghosts here." Ilya, his voice slightly trembling, responded, "Seriously, I thought we were just exploring an old building. What if there's something really there?" "Don't worry," Grisha replied, trying to ease his friend's anxiety. "We're just checking it out." Gathering their courage, they approached the entrance. It was locked, but Grisha pulled out a crowbar from his backpack and, with some effort, forced it open. The door creaked loudly as it swung open, and they stepped inside. At first, it was dark, and every step they took echoed through the empty building. "Wow, it's just like in horror movies," Ilya remarked, wiping his forehead. "Really?" Grisha smirked. "That's how it should be. Turn on your flashlight." Ilya turned on his flashlight, and they were enveloped in a murky, trembling darkness. The first thing they noticed was a cold draft that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Their initial path led them to the main hall, where cracked chairs and tables covered in dust were scattered around. Faded posters announcing some old events still hung on the walls. Grisha shone his flashlight on the wall and noticed strange, barely distinguishable inscriptions. "Look at this," he said, pointing at the unfamiliar symbols. "Looks like some ancient runic text." Ilya moved closer, examining the symbols. "But I don't know much about this." They continued their exploration and soon found themselves in a corridor, where strange sounds were coming from, like something scratching the walls. Grisha stopped and listened. "Do you hear that?" he asked in a whisper. "Yeah," Ilya shivered. "It sounds like something's crawling." Just then, a loud crack came from behind them, and both boys jumped. Grisha quickly turned around, but saw nothing. They decided to check where the sound was coming from and, entering one of the rooms, saw old photographs on the walls. They showed students in uniforms who, despite their smiles, looked somewhat tense and even troubled. "This is creepy," Ilya muttered, staring at the photos. "These people don't look happy." "Maybe it's just old photos." Grisha tried to reassure his friend. "Let's move on." They headed to the stairs and descended into the basement. Down there, the air was cold and damp, and the floor was covered in a layer of grime. Grisha turned on his flashlight, revealing strange items scattered around the floor. There were old books with covers covered in unfamiliar symbols, candles that seemed too new for such a place, and figurines resembling charred human bones arranged in circles with mysterious signs. "What is all this?" Ilya looked at the items in shock. "Some kind of ritual altar." "Maybe," Grisha agreed, approaching the bone circles. "But why is all this here?" Suddenly, they heard a scraping noise, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Their hearts raced, and they froze in anticipation. Their flashlights began to flicker, and the shadow in the corner of the room started to take shape. At first, it was an indistinguishable mass, but gradually, the outline became clearer. The shadow first appeared as an amorphous entity, but then took on a humanoid form with long, elongated limbs and eyes glowing like hot coals. "Grisha, what is that?" Ilya stared in panic at the entity. "I don't know, but it looks really bad." Grisha shut his eyes and tried to steady himself. The shadow began to move towards them, gliding through the air without touching the floor. An icy feeling gripped them, and they felt something supernatural trying to engulf them. "We need to get out of here," Grisha shouted, grabbing Ilya's hand. "Quickly, to the exit." They ran towards the stairs, but the closer they got to the exit, The more unbearable the scraping and hissing noises became. The entity was getting closer, and the shadows began to darken, filling every corner. When they finally reached the basement door, they found it locked. Grisha began to break it open with the crowbar, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic was rising, and the boys were starting to lose hope. They heard the entity growing closer and closer. At the critical moment, Ilya shouted, "Do you hear that? Someone's coming." And suddenly, in the doorway appeared a familiar figure. It was Grisha's father. He had been searching for his son and arrived when he heard about the potential trouble. "Grisha, Ilya," he cried out, seeing them in panic. "I found you. Quickly, follow me." Grisha's father was armed with a flashlight, and seeing it as their only source of light, he shone it on the door. The shadow retreated, and their path to the exit was illuminated. Grisha's father, with determination in his eyes, led them towards the main exit. "Stick with me, don't stop," he commanded. They rushed through the corridors again, following his light. The sounds of scraping and hissing behind them grew louder, but Grisha's father led the way, cutting a path with his flashlight. Finally, they reached the outside door. It was locked, but Grisha's father, realizing their time was running out, used his skills to break it open. At last, the door swung open, and they rushed out into the fresh air. The entity, lacking a physical form, could not cross the boundary of the dormitory. They watched as the sinister building receded into the distance, and the feeling of terror began to fade away with it. Back outside, under the stars and feeling the chill of the night, Grisha and Ilya felt their fear start to lift. They hugged, their faces pale but expressions relieved. "Thank you for coming after us," Grisha said, embracing his father. "It's all right," Grisha's father replied, his gaze full of concern. "The important thing is that you're alive." They never returned to that building, and each of them knew that the place was filled with fears best left in the past. The abandoned dormitory remained in their memory as a place where they confronted the unimaginable and learned that, despite all their fears, they could overcome any challenge with those who were ready to help.